Today on the This Is Gonna Be Pretty Chill Says podcast, I'll be discussing why I went on a podcast detox, my customer service experience with Neumann, hello Neumann, and other stuff too, so go ahead and stick around. Let's start with the topic of going on a podcast detox. What I mean by that is I listened to 0 podcasts. The length of this detox was 1 week, and it was beautiful. I understand this may be hypocrisy because I make podcasts. My channel is called Podcastage, so maybe I shouldn't be advocating for this. I should be saying, listen to podcasts, listen to all of my podcasts forever. But no, I want to share what I did, why I did it, and how I enjoyed it. All I did over the last week was instead of plugging in my SanDisk podcast player, I turned on my trusty dusty DAP and listened to music all day, every day. The reason I chose to do this is last week, I think it was Thursday or Friday, I didn't listen to any podcasts, I just listened to music, and at the end of the day, I found myself feeling much happier, much more relaxed. So I set this goal. I'm going to unwind because I must be too highly wound. Well, everybody knows if they watch this show, I am very high strung. But I found myself much calmer after a day of listening to only music. So I said, I'm going to try that for a week. And I listened to Alkaline Trio for a day. I listened to 4 Year Strong for a day. I listened to Radiohead for a day. I listened to Muse for a day. I listened to Like Pacific. It was just great listening to only music because it forced me, or I shouldn't say forced, it allowed me to really dive into the music and appreciate it and listen to an album multiple times because I didn't have this gnawing little thing in the back of my head. Hey, there's a new podcast that you should be listening to. You must be informed about what's going on. And because I had that unwarranted obligation to stay informed and listen to every single new episode, I would only listen to an album once. But when I didn't have that unnecessary or unwarranted obligation, I could put on 4 Year Strong Brain Pain on repeat all day long. Nobody's going to tell me not to do it. I can put on In Rainbows on my CD player on repeat all day long, which I did, and it was awesome. Just great background music. So I found it incredibly refreshing over the last week to not be constantly informed, to not listen to any podcasts, even my favorite podcasts. I ignored them. I deleted them out of my Overcast app, which is what I use to inform me that I need to go sync my SanDisk player because I'm living in 1997, even though podcasts weren't around back then. But I didn't listen to any. Yes, I am much more uninformed. I don't know what happened at all in the news over the last week. And maybe there's some significant truth to ignorance is bliss because I have been bordering on blissful this last week. It has been a beautiful existence. But talking about this brings up a sore point for me. I still have no understanding why digital audio player manufacturers do not have podcasting functionality. None of them that I can find have podcasting functionality unless you get one of the larger dApps that has a full version of Android on it where you can access the Google Play Store and then download Spotify or some other podcast app. Maybe I'm crazy because I'm not an app coder, but it seems like basic podcast playback functionality would be pretty simple to set up. First off, have a folder titled Podcasts, and then say any MP3 or M4A file within this folder treat as a podcast. And then here are a list of the criteria or the commands or the rules for those files. The most basic would be save the playback location of each podcast file when clicking around, add skip 15 seconds forward or backwards, and then start playback from the last playback location or from the beginning. Whenever you start a podcast, give that option. And that's really all that you need. You don't need any crazy functions there. Just a couple of rules. Yet none of these DAP manufacturers care about that. None of them have rolled it out, and it has been driving me crazy. I got my first DAP back in 2018. It was a FiO, one of those. Then I don't remember the other one that I got in 2020. And then last year, I got this Shanling because it is tiny. It's the M0. It's the size of one of those old iPod Nanos. The headphone amp is great. There is no hiss on my Dunu SA6 IEMs. So that's why I got this. It's easy to fit in my pocket when I'm walking around. And the headphone amp doesn't introduce any unnecessary noise when I'm listening with IEMs. But Shanling, FiO, none of the DAP manufacturers have podcast playback. And I've emailed all three of them that I have and said, hey, can you roll out podcast functionality? And they've just said, you can buy one of our larger DAPs with Android, and then you could download Spotify. I don't want to do that. I want this tiny little DAP that has music and then has podcasting. I don't want to have to set up the SanDisk. I don't want to have to charge it every day. I don't want to have to transfer files to that as well. I just want a single DAP. And the Shanling works well for me. This seems like an ad. No, it's not an ad. They won't roll out podcasting functionality, so don't buy it. Don't buy their gear. Don't buy their DAPs until they do it. This is a boycott. I'm not saying boycott anybody. Just please, Shanling, FiO, the other one that I can't remember. It's sitting on my desk out there. I can't remember what they're called. But this is a plea. If you are a DAP manufacturer, if you roll out a digital audio player that is small, that has a good headphone amp, that has decent battery life, and you have podcast functionality, basic podcast functionality, and you support it, and you roll out updates, I will give you my money. I have been waiting 6 years for any of them to do it. None of them will do it. What the heck? I'm going to have to bust out my old iPod Touch. It's stupid. Get with the times. Podcasts are important. That is my rant. Listen to me. I want to give you my money, but you clearly don't want it. That is it for that rant. My next rant is less of a rant and more about me just sharing my experience, because this information, in my opinion, is really important when you're spending a lot of money on audio gear, and that experience is customer service. Last episode, I included a clip of my Neumann, hello Neumann, BCM705, and there was quite a big issue there. If you turned on phantom power, it created this underlying hiss. It almost sounded like there was wind being blown over the diaphragm of the microphone. After I finished recording that episode, I had that section clipped. I was going to upload it to Podcastage too, and then I thought, this doesn't seem right. This really seems like this wouldn't be something that Neumann overlooked. So I contacted their customer service line. I sent them an audio clip. And within 2 business days, I received a response. We tried to recreate that issue in our shop, in our factory. We were unable to do it. This is going to be some kind of RMA. You need to send it in for repair. Here is where you need to send it. It is out of warranty, so you will have to pay for shipping one direction, and then we'll go ahead and repair it. If there is a quote, if there is a cost to it, we'll invoice you. You can pay that. We'll ship it back to you. First off, the speed with which they got back to me after verifying that the issue was actually an issue was incredible to me. A couple of days. When I was dealing with Blue, it would be multiple weeks and sometimes up to a month in between receiving responses from them. With Manly, it wasn't as bad as Blue, but it still wasn't great. In this instance, 2 business days, we got your submission. We verified with a working model that shouldn't be happening. Here are the next steps. Send it in, and we will get back to you. 2 days. Beautiful. You may be thinking, Bandrew, you complained about Manly making you pay for shipping. Why aren't you complaining about it here? My BCM705 is 5 years old, so it's 3 years out of warranty, so I shouldn't be expecting them to cover the shipping of that. Had I noticed this week 1 when I got the 705 and then they made me pay, what was it, $50 to ship it back to them, I would be kicking and screaming and saying, "Ah, gosh darn it, they stink." But from experience, I know they don't do that. I still have, the Sennheiser MD441U. When I got that, I encountered an issue a couple of months later, and I submitted a ticket on Sennheiser's website. They sent me a prepaid shipping label, and I think it was 30 minutes, and then I shipped it out the next day. Got the repaired microphone 2 weeks later. It was beautiful. So I know that Sennheiser and Neumann, hello Neumann, if you don't know, Sennheiser owns Neumann. I know from experience their customer service is really good. This just reiterates that, and that is very reassuring because when you're spending as much as you do on Neumann microphones, you want to know that the product is high quality, but sometimes you do get lemons, sometimes things do go wrong, and when that does occur, you want to be treated right, you want to be treated properly, and you want to have good lines of communication. So I just wanted to share that with you. It will be interesting once I get the 705 back to see how it compares to the 104 again, because maybe there was something wrong that altered the sound of it as well. I really hope not, because that would just be terrible if I reviewed a microphone that was faulty. Regardless, I will likely be doing a re-review of the 705 once I get that back and make sure everything is working. Also, from this experience, I have learned now I need to test dynamics and condensers with 48 volts phantom power to make sure that the dynamics are wired properly, and then I need to verify with the company, if it does have this issue, that is a design flaw or that maybe I have a faulty unit. So it's kind of embarrassing for me, really. It's something I should have caught, but I don't ever run phantom power into dynamics, so I don't know how I would have caught that, but now I know to check for that in the future. This does raise a really interesting issue for me, or a question, I guess, when it comes to buying and reviewing and demoing audio gear. Do you think it's better to buy the gear directly from the company and say, please open it up, make sure everything is functioning as it ought to, and then send it out? That way I know the gear that I get is going to be a review of the gear as it ought to be, as it's supposed to be, as it was designed to be? Or is it better to buy the gear on the open market from an authorized dealer where you risk getting a potential lemon? That could sometimes invalidate a review if you don't catch something. But on the upside, if you do get a lemon, then you also get the experience of dealing with their customer service department, and that is very important information to have. So I already know the answer. The answer is buy the gear on the open market and don't just get perfect gear from the company, because that would also raise concerns. Did the company do something special to that mic knowing it was going to be reviewed? Did they change something up? Is it some kind of specialized unit that performs better? Are they trying to manipulate the reviews? So buying on the open market is the proper way to go, in my opinion. On occasion, I have bought directly from the companies, but I don't ask them to open stuff and test it out. I have even received lemons directly from the companies. That was the SE Electronics Dynacaster, if I remember correctly. I remember using that on the podcast and saying, it's fine, but it's really not great. And I emailed SE and said, hey, is this broken, or is this how it actually should sound? And they said it's broken, so I shipped it back to them and then said, don't send me I'm just going to buy it on the open market from an AD. I'll just buy it from them. And that's how I've pretty much functioned most of the time, but I have bought a few microphones directly from the company. I bought the Shure TL48, their lav mic for spoken word, which eventually I'll be reviewing and doing a bunch of comparisons. I'm excited about that. But I would love to hear from you. What are your thoughts? Do you think it would be better to actually buy directly from the company, buy directly from the manufacturer, and ask them to verify what you're getting is in full working order? Or do you think the proper course of action is to buy gear from an authorized dealer and risk getting a lemon? Let me know in the comments down below on YouTube. That is it for rants. We are now jumping to what you had to say, and the first comment comes from Crescent Roll Carl. He says, I'm not sure why we accept this sort of thing from Apple when if Google or Meta were doing the same thing, we would probably be very skeptical of their motives. When Apple does it, it's a good thing? Is Apple training their LMM on this? Carl, thank you very much for the comment. If you don't know what Carl is referring to, on the last episode of this show, I talked about Apple auto-transcribing podcasts that are in the Apple Podcast app, and I was saying, hey, this is a pretty good thing because it makes podcasts more acceptable. Carl is saying, why are we accepting this? Why do you think this is a good thing? If Google or Meta were doing this, we would be skeptical. We would not trust it. Why is this a good thing? Or why are you accepting this, essentially? I can't speak for what Meta does because I don't upload any of my content there. I don't use Meta. I don't use Facebook or any of that, so I can't talk to that. What I can talk to is YouTube and Google. Google already does this. Whenever you upload a video to YouTube, they auto-generate captions for that video, which you're able to turn on by clicking the C button on your keyboard or the little CC at the bottom of each video. That is all based on auto-generated captions, which is identical to Apple creating transcriptions of those podcasts. On top of that, if you search on Google and there is a video on YouTube that answers that question at 14 minutes into the video, they will return just that section of the video highlighted, saying, here is a video with the answer to your question. They are providing that information, they are providing that result based on the transcriptions of the video. So Google is already doing this. They are even allowing you to query the transcription data. But to my understanding, the only real difference here is you're not able to directly query a video on YouTube. You have to go about it through Google. And on Apple Podcasts, it seems as though you're going to have the transcription and then you can directly query each episode. Maybe you'll be able to query an entire podcast catalog, but maybe they will just limit the queryability, the searchability to the actual episode that you're listening to or reading. We'll have to wait and see how that rolls out. I also wanted to point out, last week I wasn't sure if you were able to export Google's transcripts, their auto-generated captions. It turns out you are able to download the auto-generated captions from YouTube. In order to do this, you go to YouTube Creator Studio, click on Subtitles, click on the video that you want, then you hover over the published date, you click on the three dots, which is our options menu, you click Download, and then you have the ability to download a .vtt, a .srt, or a .sbv subtitle file. And if you're watching, I will show what these files look like in a text editor. It seems to have timestamps and then a line of text that was spoken, another timestamp, line of text that was spoken, and so on and so forth. That seems to be the pretty standard format of these subtitle files. But Google offers the ability to export transcripts or auto-generated captions and subtitles, just like Apple will be doing. And Google already allows you to query those transcriptions by searching stuff on Google. You just can't directly query videos or query transcriptions on a specific video or a specific channel. You would have to search for a topic on Google to get any kind of results that are based on those transcriptions. But so far, I haven't seen any complaints over the last 5 or 10 years. Google stealing our data. They are transcribing our videos. How dare they? People just use the auto-generated closed captions, and they are very helpful. I have even used the auto-translated closed captioning when I was watching videos that aren't in English. It is an incredibly useful tool. I have not seen any complaints, but if you have seen people complaining about Google auto-generating captions, auto-creating transcriptions, and allowing you to download and export those transcriptions, let me know. I would love to hear the argument for that and see what people are saying. Thank you very much for the comment, Carl. Hopefully that cleared things up. Next, we have a comment from Sound Speeds, and he says, so, if I want my podcast transcripted, all I have to do is upload to Apple and then download the file and do whatever I want with it? Considering this is Apple, it's probably going to be in a proprietary format. Alan, thank you very much for the comment. I had to include this because I wanted to provide a bit of clarification here. First off, as far as Apple having some kind of proprietary format, maybe you're right. Probably they love having a format that is dedicated to Apple devices, Mac computers, so maybe so. We'll have to wait and see how that is. But what I wanted to clarify, you're not able to upload a podcast directly to Apple. Apple Podcast is just an aggregator of RSS feeds. So in order to get your show into Apple Podcasts, you go and find a podcast host, Libsyn, Blueberry, Reactor. I believe there's about a 5 million more. Sorry, that's very offensive to Italians. I apologize. I'm going to stop. Stop while you're ahead. Stop it. I am back. I am composed. I am no longer offensive. There are 5 million podcast hosts. I'm not composed. I'm not back. You upload your MP3 M4A file there. You have your RSS feed. Then you go to Apple Podcasts and you just say, here is my RSS feed. Allow people to find it in Apple Podcasts. That's how it works. So Apple has none of your files. They do not store your files. All they do is direct people to the host where your file is and download it directly from your host. But now they will have to do something with the transcripts. Maybe they will store that on a local server and have that available when somebody downloads it. Or maybe they will auto-generate it when somebody downloads a podcast using Apple Podcasts. I'm not sure. They probably wouldn't want to have the storage cost associated with auto-generated transcripts of every single podcast that is in Apple Podcasts, because even though it is just text, that would probably be quite a bit of data. With the amount of podcasts that are available, I don't know. But if you are just looking for free transcription services and you want the timestamps in there, essentially just subtitle files, you can get that from YouTube. I learned that this week researching the response to Carl. There you go. I had to clarify, Apple does not host your files. You can't upload anything directly to Apple. You have to go host your own stuff elsewhere, and you just give them your RSS feed and say, let somebody find it in your directory. It's a podcast directory. Thank you very much, Alan. Next, we have a comment from Fred Overflow. He says, have you ever put the Shure A7WS on a Sennheiser handheld microphone? Just the grill, not the handle. It's the ultimate plosive killer. Fred, thank you very much for the comment and the suggestion. I have not tried this before, but you know me. I like putting this stuff to the test. So this is the Sennheiser E835 running into the 18i 22nd gen, gain set at around 430. 48 volts is on, no issues here, and please bring pizza pronto. Please bring pizza pronto. Not great without any kind of foam on it. So that is the E835 without the A7WS. And now I have the A7WS on the Sennheiser E835. I'm at the exact same distance, and here is how it's sounding. And please bring pizza pronto. Please bring pizza pronto. Please bring not a hint of a plosive on this thing. Absolutely. This is a plosive killer. Plosive killer. Very good. And here's another sample of the E835 at the exact same distance without the foam windscreen, so you can hear how it sounds and get a good understanding of it. And here is another sample of the E835 with the A7WS on it, just so you can hear how it sounds. That's enough of the test. Let's go back to the regularly scheduled podcast. That is it for what you had to say. Now we are jumping to the value for value section because, yes, this show is value for value. What that means, I don't put anything behind a paywall. I shut off ads on this channel. So if you enjoy ad-free viewing, it is thanks to these wonderful people. But I try to add as much value as I can to this show, and if you get any value out of it, you just return that in whichever format you find necessary, whether it's monetary, whether it's your time, whether it's your talent, whether it's through amazing titles in the comments for a podcast episode, or saying, hey, you should clip this and make it a short. That is all incredibly valuable to me, and I appreciate you returning value in whatever way you're able. First, we have 14 Canadian dollars from Greg LG, and he says, let's get Bandrew out of the red light district. Greg, thank you very much for the $14, and when I was editing the episode last week, I thought the exact same thing. This looks like some kind of movie where somebody is in the red light district. This is going to create some confusion. Maybe people will think that I am trying to conjure up images of sexy ladies. That's a reference that nobody's going to get. There was Shane Gillis. He's a comedian, and he was talking about the specials. And I can't explain it. It's an insane clip. Just look up Shane Gillis, the specials. The ladies are sexy. I was concerned people would think that I was trying to conjure up something, but I just set my Philips Hue to Soho, and the light right here is very red. I changed it, so now I have green and blue, I think it is. I'm colorblind. That's still red, but it's pointed down, so you don't see it. So this week, we're back with a regular boring lighting that is white. It looks normal. It's not all color-graded funky, but hopefully you enjoyed the short stint in the sexy corridor in some far-off foreign country. If I remember, at the end of this year, I will say that was a highlight. I visited the red light district on this podcast, and isn't that amazing? Somebody must have done that, right? Go to the red light district. That's in Amsterdam, right? They must have gone there and recorded a podcast. If they haven't done that, that seems like a job for soft white underbelly. If you want to get depressed, go watch the YouTube channel Soft White Underbelly. He interviews people who live on the street. He interviews people who use sex workers. He interviews people who are addicts. He interviews a bunch of people. It's an incredibly fascinating channel, and he's doing a really great service, but it can really wear you down because it is a bummer seeing the situation some of these people are in. This was kind of a joke, and then I realized, yeah, he'd probably do a really good job at that, and there'd be a lot of stuff we could learn from him doing that. Okay, there you go. Thank you very much, Greg. I appreciate you. Next, we have €25 from TechMed Raina Richter. He says, Danke. Raina, thank you very much for the €25, and thank you so much for the constant support. I did get a comment from Buja Kashka, and he said, you should roll the R when saying Raina. And it sounds so much better when I do that. I have said your name multiple times just walking around my house this week saying Raina, because it's so much fun. It's so much more fun with the rolled R. So thank you so much for the €25 for the constant support. And thank you, Buja Kashka, for making Raina's name so much more fun to say. I appreciate you both very, very much. And thank you to all of the Value for Value supporters. Again, if you enjoy this show ad-free, it is thanks to their generous support. That is it for this week's episode. We have no Ask Bandrews that we're answering this week. Go send them in. Go to askbandrew.com, askbandrew.com, askbandrew.com. Send in an audio, video, or text question, and I'll get around to answering it. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming by this week and listening and hanging out with me. I appreciate you. You are incredible. I hope you have an amazing Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Next Sunday, I will be back. I will be talking at you. I love you. Bye-bye. Whoa, whoa, boop.
This has been a Geeks Rising production. Your executive producer is Bandrew Scott. For more information, head over to www.geeksrising.com.